Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Tropical Weather Outlook video for today, Monday, June 16th, 2025. It is time to talk serious, as in the Eastern Pacific, we are on the verge of having a new storm develop, and this time it could be a pretty significant storm for Mexico, not like Delilah, which was a storm just off the coast of Mexico and only brought light tropical storm force winds. We're talking about an actual potential hurricane threat to Mexico upcoming this week. So let's start off by looking at the National Hurricane Center homepage to see what that area that we are watching is. And it is Invest 94E down here in the southeastern Pacific, just off the Central American coastline. The latest National Hurricane Center tropical weather outlook updated as of 11 a.m. Pacific time, so earlier this afternoon, gives this area a 90% chance of development within the next 48 hours and 7 days. So it is almost a sure thing that this storm will develop and will probably become a tropical storm. And the name that it'll be given is probably Eric, since that is the next name on the list in the Eastern Pacific. So this will be moving then to the west northwest, but instead of paralleling the Mexican coast, this might be something we need to watch for potentially southeastern Mexico, especially around the Gulf of Tehuantepec region here. This might potentially be a significant storm, more than just a run-of-the-mill tropical storm like the last several systems we've had to develop here in the Eastern Pacific. There's a chance that this might become a hurricane, and a pretty decent one at that too. I'll show you the model guidance in just a moment, and I'll also show you the factors here. But we're going to have to watch 94E very closely. Here's a satellite image of the storm right now. It's well on its way to becoming a tropical depression. You could clearly see rotation in here. There's already a closed low-level center, I believe, within the storm, but it's still a little bit broad right now. Although you could definitely see the turning, the energy is definitely there. And a good way to look at that is the 850 millibar vorticity pattern. And you could see lots of energy there in the southeastern Pacific, but it's still a little bit broad right now. But I won't be surprised. This only maybe needs probably about 12 to maybe 15 more hours max. And I'm pretty sure that by tomorrow morning, we will for sure be talking about our next tropical depression here, maybe Tropical Storm Eric, here in the Eastern Pacific. And once this develops, this will probably pretty quickly ramp up. And this is the reason why, if you look here in the southeastern Pacific, especially near the Gulf of Tehuantepec, which is generally the area that looks like will be impacted right now, sea surface temperature anomalies are very, very warm, or at least right where they should be, to above normal. In fact, a lot of the anomalies here, at least a quarter to a half degree Celsius above normal. Even some of these anomalies a little bit higher than that, maybe as much as a full degree Celsius above normal. So the sea surface temperatures are warm, and I'll actually show you what the real sea surface temperatures are, because these were the anomalies. And it's not like this storm is going to be moving off to the west northwest here, into these cooler sea surface temperature anomalies, which exists further to the west here in the northern and eastern portions of the Pacific. It's going to be trapped right down south here near Central America and southern Mexico. And the actual sea surface temperatures, as you could see, are anywhere between 29 and 30 degrees Celsius, more than enough needed for rapid intensification. So this is going to ramp up quickly, especially as soon as it gets a consolidated center going, which it already has a closed low-level center. It's just broad right now, but all it'll probably take is tomorrow morning, once we get to the diurnal maximum convective cycle, for convective thunderstorms to fully consolidate around the center, and it's going to take off. And depending on how long it takes, it'll probably take off quickly, and we will potentially see this ramp up and become a hurricane before it makes landfall here, generally in southeastern Mexico. around the Gulf of Tehuantepec. And I should have brought up a map to see what specific towns or cities there might be here. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. But this will be a threat to Mexico, and obviously, when we're not just going to be talking about a hurricane threat, but potentially as well a rainfall threat. That is a huge thing, especially with these systems in Mexico. And, the terrain as well is an issue, probably lots of mountainous terrains, and definitely lots of heavy rainfall is probably coming with this system. And we also had a pretty significant storm last year, I think, somewhere around this region, Hurricane John. Mexico really seems to be getting hit, especially closer towards the southeastern portion over the last several years. So do not let your guard down, and especially if you are in southeastern Mexico, please keep a watch on this storm as we head into the rest of this week, until later this week. And I'll show you here on the GFS. I'll show you the 850 millibar vorticity. This is going to take a little bit of time to consolidate, but by tomorrow you could see this will probably fully close off and consolidate into a tropical storm. This is late Tuesday into early Wednesday. And then late Wednesday, that's already a pretty well-developed tropical storm. In fact, probably a strengthening storm. And then this seems to make landfall late Thursday evening, maybe early Friday morning here near the Gulf of Tehuantepec region, maybe just to the west of that. And I believe on this run of the GFS, the 12Z run, look at that. That's a hurricane probably coming into Mexico. 975, 978 millibars. That is definitely a hurricane on the model. So this will probably ramp up pretty quickly once it gets going as it heads into Mexico. And one of the reasons why that'll happen, I just really quickly want to show you the 200 millibar wind pattern, because not only, really quickly going back to the sea surface temperature map, not only will this have a favorable sea surface temperature environment in it, this will be around 29, 30 degrees Celsius waters, which is very, very warm. That's more than enough for rapid intensification. That's pretty much bath water, and bath water stretched out over hundreds of miles and probably pretty deep as well. And I should have brought up the ocean heat content map to show you just how much actual energy there is in the ocean, because I'm pretty sure there's quite a bit here. But we'll probably do that tomorrow. Gonna, hold some things off for tomorrow. I just wanted to get this information out to you today. But there's a lot of energy in the ocean, and we also have a favorable upper level pattern. Look at what happens here in the 250 millibar wind pattern. This is 72 hours out, so Thursday late morning getting into the afternoon. Look at this huge kind of upper level anticyclone that we have that situates itself directly on top of 94 East. So this upper level anticyclone, we have winds that are dispersing away from the storm, not cutting across the top of it like we have maybe winds over here. And that's what an upper level anticyclone is. It's this vast, large area of circular winds at the upper levels, which allows for the winds to blow away from the storm at the upper levels, and that allows for hurricanes to breathe and intensify. So the bottom line is when you see this kind of look over a storm, that is absolutely the sign of ripe conditions for very quick development. And you can even see within a span of 24 hours here on the GFS, we go from a 997 millibar low to a 975 millibar low. So that's a drop of 20 millibars in the span of just 24 hours. So that is pretty quick intensification. And given that this is a global model, it's the GFS, it's not a hurricane model like the HWRF, which I'm about to show you. In fact, I'll show you it right now. Here's a pretty quick run of the HWRF, brings us down to 972 millibars. So actually not entirely that off from the GFS, but very interestingly enough, actually brings us down to kind of 971 millibars. and maximum winds at 92 knots. So that's, I think, moderate range category 2. So this is not even going to be like a weak borderline low end Cat 1, like for instance Barbara was. This might actually be, if you believe the H-Wharf, a category 2, and I certainly wouldn't see why not. I mean, this has a favorable upper level wind pattern, and that's pretty much going to stick with it up until landfall, as you can see here on the GFS. Very warm sea surface temperatures, 29, 30 degrees Celsius. We'll see how much time this has. It looks like once it really starts getting going, which at least looking at the H-Wharf, let's see when it really gets going. Late Tuesday. So it'll only have, I guess, 48 hours, so 2 days, so maybe not enough time for this to fully ramp up and maybe become a major hurricane, although we've seen how these things have played out over the last several years, especially with storms like Hurricane Otis. Sometimes they don't even need 48 hours to ramp up very significantly and become pretty powerful hurricanes. So bottom line, all I'm telling you is, especially if you are in southeastern Mexico, and let me actually see right now what are some potential cities in that region so we can generally get an idea of what to look at. So Salina Cruz is definitely a town here. Puerto Escondido, and let's see, Acapulco is a little bit further to the west here. So I guess Acapulco won't need to worry as much about a direct impact, but obviously do not let your guard down. But in general, if you are in southeastern Mexico, pay close attention to this storm. It might catch you by surprise. This might genuinely be a pretty big impact, and certainly something that you'll want to start preparing for now, because this will ramp up quickly, and we're definitely going to be talking about it. And really quickly, just looking at the H-Wharf here once again, gets this down to 972 millibars, and maximum sustained winds are at 92 knots. And the H-Wharf could be underdoing it, honestly, because we know how these models are. The biggest uncertainty right now, or the biggest uncertainty when it comes to models and tracking in the hurricane community, is with intensity. The least uncertainty, or the least certainty, the most uncertainty is with intensity guidance. We still do not know how quickly these storms could rapidly intensify. We're starting to get a better idea, especially with models like the HAFS model. I remember they did really well with indicating Milton's rapid intensification last year. The HAFS, I think, had Milton getting down to a 905 millibar storm well before anybody thought that Milton would even be able to become a Category 5. And then we ended up seeing how strong Milton got. So we're starting to get there. And maybe with some of this AI models that are beginning to rise up and become revolutionary in our tracking in the hurricane community, maybe that'll help us a little bit further when it comes to intensity forecasting. But there's still a lot of uncertainty with intensity forecasting. So the model's showing right now potentially a Category 1, Category 2 storm. I would expect for this to potentially become a Category 3. Always prepare for a storm at a category higher than it's forecasted to. A very good planning tool. And also start preparing now. As I always say, and it's pretty much my motto for this year, luck favors the prepared. So we're going to be watching 94E very closely over the next 2 or 3 days. Really quickly though, let's talk a little bit about the Atlantic. Even though there's not really much happening in the Atlantic right now, but I wanted to talk about it because I did see some people over the past several days mention something related to the Atlantic, especially comparing it to past years, inactive years, given that so far in the Atlantic we've not had a named storm yet, and it's June 15th. Now, that is not untypical, because I think I mentioned this a few days ago. the average first name storm, climatologically speaking, in the Atlantic is June 20th. So we're still pretty much on following the average. We're not behind schedule really yet for our first name storm in the Atlantic, but it certainly has been quite a bit of while, or quite a bit of a long time we've been waiting for our first name storm so far this year, especially compared to the last several years in the Atlantic. I mean, last year we had to wait till June 19th when we got Tropical Storm Alberto, when that was the first storm that formed last year, but pretty much every single year before that, we already had a named storm by now. And and if things continue, this might be the latest starting hurricane season since I think 2014, and that is a year that a lot of people are bringing up, because it looks like we might have to wait as long as 2014 for us to get our first name storm. And a lot of people are starting to question whether or not this hurricane season can be like 2014, which, by the way, if you are not familiar, was not an active hurricane season at all, which is why I'm very skeptical, and I do not think this year will be like 2014, because I'll show you right now with the NOAA Coral Reef Watch sea surface temperature anomaly map, comparing the map updated as of yesterday. Let's compare it to how it looked like this time in 2014. And as you can see, I do not see this year being a year like 2014, even though we might be waiting as long, even though this year might be the latest start since then when it comes to when our first name storm will form. There is really not that much similarity to this year, to 2014. In fact, I've even seen some people on Twitter saying that to everybody talking about 2014, I would advise against it. I mean, it looks pretty different, especially comparing how the Atlantic looked versus the Pacific did. In 2014, you could see how much warmer the Pacific was that year. We had a very, very warm Northern Pacific. We had a positive PDO. We also had a developing El Nino that year. Two things, both of which we definitely do not have in the Pacific this year. And on the contrary, in the Atlantic, also the MDR, let's compare that to 2014, much warmer, especially even in the Caribbean and Gulf, also much warmer this year compared to 2014. And so I don't think that this year is really that comparable to 2014. I don't think that this year will be a below normal hurricane season. And I think, especially given that this year we do not have an El Nino, the Pacific is definitely cooler. We have a negative PDO pattern. And I mean, just generally looking at the Pacific versus the Atlantic, you could definitely tell the Atlantic is warmer. Sure, we have a lot of activity in the Pacific right now, but it's typical, especially it is the early season right now, so the Atlantic really doesn't have much activity anyway, so it makes sense that all of the energy and all of the development is being focused in the Pacific right now. But even so, the last few storms we've had were not really strong in any way, shape, or form. They were not really potent. Maybe 94E, like I mentioned today, might become a pretty potent storm, but at least leading up to now, so far, most of the storms we've had in the Pacific have been weak. Only one out of the past four storms that formed became a hurricane. That was Barbara. And even then, it only reached 75 miles an hour. So I think we can cross off 2014 as a comparison to this year, meaning I don't think this year is going to be a below normal year. In fact, it's probably much more likely that will be pretty active, especially, comparing the warmth to 2014 to this year, much warmer in the Atlantic, maybe not as warm as last year or 2023, but it's still warmer compared to normal. And especially when you compare that to no El Nino and perhaps maybe a weak La Nina, depending on how things go. Yeah, I think this year could once again be above normal. But at least, again, for the next week, let's really quickly take a look at the GFS. Nothing to worry about over the next week, so no need to get your tropical storm plans or your hurricane plans or get out the shutters now. There's nothing to worry about in the tropics for at least the next week in the Atlantic. Once again, all the concern will be in the Eastern Pacific for now with 94E, as it could potentially be a hurricane threat to Mexico, and we will certainly be monitoring it very closely here over the next 2 to 3 days. So if you haven't already, now's the time to make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, because we will be doing a lot of video updates coming. We might even be doing a few live streams in the coming days to talk about 94E. So if you are interested in that, once again, subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so you could also get whenever I upload videos the moment I upload them. And also like this video, comment your thoughts below if you like what you saw today, and share this video with family and friends as well so you can keep them updated as well, especially if you have people in the region in Mexico that are potentially under threat from what could be a hurricane later this week. With that being said, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe out there. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I will talk again with you tomorrow.